It's a pleasure to connect with you all again, and happy Tuesday. And I have the distinction of helping to kick off the wrap talks and kick off the afternoon for MaximoWorld. And I think it's important for us to set a little context and also show how this draws through into the other work that we're doing and the other sessions that we're delivering through the rest of the conference. We're going to go through a couple of things, and I want to talk about, in the context of AI, why now? What's different about this point in time versus a year ago, versus 5 years ago, and so on? Discuss a little what it looks like to implement an AI system, talk about some of the pros and cons with that, things to consider, and then look at future-proofing as we're evolving technology stacks, as we're evolving businesses, and give you some guidance on what to look for and what to steer toward as you're doing implementations. Now, I am an engineer, and I do like to count from 0. I have a warm exercise after lunch, so I would love for y'all to shout out to me and answer this question. What role would AI play on your next teams? Given everything you've seen today, given what you know, given what you've tinkered with, just shout out something. Taking notes, advisor. Assistant. Daily helper. Automation. Agent. There's a lot to unpack in that. Advisor. Troublemaker. That's a good one. Troubleshooter, too. Now, I pulled a few of these out, right? And I think maybe you'll see some of them on the page here. And it's funny to ask that question because those are the kinds of things that if you take for granted the technology and you take for granted the impact of the technology, these are the things that have to be in place. We expect to see people leverage the stuff to do certain things. And if you've been reading the chart, maybe you would also notice that I put some stuff in for fun because we've got this perspective of what AI should be and what it could be based on just popular culture, right? And Jarvis is an example of that. There's other examples evolved of that, right? And I could even offer to you a different one. This is from a small screen show called Devs. But I pick it because there's a quantum chandelier. It's part of the computer that powers the AI system and whatever. But this is not a case of life imitating art, but rather art imitating life, because that quantum chandelier is based on an actual quantum chandelier from IBM's quantum systems. And I find it really funny that that kind of circularity happens there. Now, when I asked you that question about what kind of stuff an AI is going to do, how many folks thought about this? Anyone know what that is? Or recognize it? How about that? That's Google Assistant. Or how about this one? Yes, I know the Apple crowd in the room. And how many folks have had that activate at the wrong time? Yeah. It's funny that we take for granted this technology and we dismiss and set aside these things that could be assistants, that could take notes for us, that could help give us our to-do lists and all those things. Because I could do all that on this device. Why aren't we using them? What's the things that are getting in the way? We should talk about that. So why now? This is an intense period of transformation. And it's like the dot-com boom, or like mobile emerging, or for those that have been before that, the initial digitization journey in the first place. And for AI in particular, from the last decade or so, there's been this huge transformation in our understanding of the technology. 2011, to remind you all, we had machine learning technologies where error rates and the best we could do at science was pretty good, but still not as good as a human. Deep learning came in almost 10 years ago and could best a human for the first time at certain tasks. Advancing that forward, 2022, November, this came up in one of the user group sessions yesterday. Someone asked the question, hey, Gen AI has been around for years, why haven't we blah, blah, blah? And someone corrected them and said, it's only been 17 months since November of 2022. less than 2 years, right? It's a tremendous uptake of the tech in such a short time. And in this world where I have something called a transformer AI network, where I don't have labeled data necessarily, where it's doing things that it was never trained to do in the first place, how do I even define an error rate for that, right? Like, if I'm trying to find the bike in the picture, I can do a pretty good job of that. In this case, where I never showed the system this type of transformer, how do you even judge the efficacy of it? And another trick for you, since it's after lunch, for those that are in distribution, what kind of transformer is that on the screen? Would anyone be brave enough to shout out? Is it correct if you look closely? Look even closer. That image is from Stable Diffusion. It's a diffusion AI model. It's a transformer-based AI model. I took about 2 minutes to put the text in the white box, and it created that image as a result. That's been possible for years. Since 2020, 2021, 2022, we've been advancing it, but it's gotten to the point where I could simply type that stuff, and that's the result that I got. And I play that trick with you to emphasize, again, the rate and pace of advancement of the technology, and to emphasize why this point in time is that inflection point in the capability, because we're now able to leverage these tricks to drive value into a large part of our workflow and our ecosystem. So talking about implementation of AI, in the past, AI projects have been kind of at the periphery of things. It's been where we're using AI to help to solve a problem, or experiment on the side, or to say, hey, why don't we try and see if this can solve this issue? Those sorts of kind of side experiments are kind of incrementally adding value, but they're not really transforming how we operate, right? We're shifting now into a world where that AI infusion is really fundamentally rethinking how we're working with the systems, how we're driving value through the domains that they touch. And that shift from and then AI to AI plus is, I think, where we're starting to see dividends and value for all of our use cases. Now, looking at use cases in particular and zooming into them, if I pick on data as the foundational layer, data continues to come up in these conversations. We'll talk about that some more in certain sessions. We'll talk about that some more in the afternoon today and tomorrow. But there's geospatial data, there's sensor or IoT data, there's image or video data, there's the business processes that we're driving. All those things, if I were to start meshing them together, I could actually drive a tremendous value above any one of them by itself, right? Because if I can combine weather data along with routes, I can start driving decisions about literally where you're driving when, right? And either one of them you could sort of work with, but the two together drive tremendous value. Combine that with the capabilities now that are available in AI models, things that, yes, we've been able to do for some time, I can make better. Things that are net new, that idea of generating content, like the image that I played with you with earlier, those are all driving tremendous value across a variety of different domains, from long-term planning to just day-to-day operations to predictive maintenance, like we've talked about a bunch, but even things like just customer service and how you interact with the system. All those together are driving or deriving value from that same set of core data that you have today. Now, putting something together like that is complex, and complex systems require intentional innovation. That's literally my job as one of the leaders of the technology team inside of IBM Sustainability. And to be honest, that intentional innovation takes into account the rapid evolution of this stuff as we see in the ecosystem, and as we see as just vendors, as we're playing to advance and to grow the capabilities. We have to remember this is an evolving space, and we expect it to continue to evolve. It has to. But we have to be careful to avoid situations like this, where we built this Frankenstein system where we're depending on this one critical key process that was never intended to do the role that it's doing. That careful consideration starts from understanding of the business, understanding of the data, understanding of everything in context around it, but you have to be careful in the choices you're making as implementers and as people giving value back to the broader customer base, whether it's inside your business or your actual customers externally. Now, putting these together, Gen AI has tremendous benefits, right? Things like performing tasks, giving productivity, time to value improvements, but there's risks that go with that too. Risks that are new. Things like confidentiality concerns that came up in one of the discussions that I got to sit in the back of earlier today. Things like a prompt attack. If anyone knows SQL injection, prompt injection is a whole thing to pay attention to now. There are risks that are amplified. Things that might be affecting data bias or explainability or accountability. And there's just things that you have to do in technology around data transfer or transparency or sovereignty of data. All of these things together must be considered. In the context of this, any approach that just addresses technology by itself is set to fail. Because if you follow the thesis that the technology is evolving and it's getting better at solving certain tasks, and that I can go from having a 5-step process to a 2-step process to maybe a 0-step process, and you imagine that as part of a larger machine for a second, if I'm changing this bit in the middle of the machine, then everything that it touches around it must change as well, right? Just that's how it works. In the same way, in organizations interacting with these technologies will notice these changes if we're able to be successful with them. And therefore, we must be able to evolve how that organization interacts with that system as well. So that means that it's not just about model lifecycle management or the operations of the system on day 2. Those are important. But strategically, as an organization, what is your ethics policy, right? What planning do you have to address in terms of financial reporting, in terms of ESG reporting, in terms of your own choices that you're making? These come together across all roles. And it requires that broader conversation. And if you're successful with the implementation, then in that case, that rising tide will lift all boats across all those roles. In isolation, though, it just leads to friction. So as a guiding point, as you're discussing AI transformation, business transformation processes must be in that conversation as well. Looking at this future-proofing, kind of getting to the closing points here for a second. AI is fundamentally more than just chatbots. I've given up on trying to correct people at this point, but there's more to it than that. It's just this is what people have now, as a society, touched and interacted with, that they understand and can comprehend. And that's how we've chosen to define it. So, great. There's so much more. We fixated on Gen AI as chatbots or email summaries or pictures of puppies on the moon, right? But there's classes of models, there's techniques, and there's just plain old tricks you can even do in a spreadsheet in Excel that, frankly, machine learning and deep learning and generative AI can all help you to address. But that broader set of capabilities can give you so many different things given the data that you have. Now, what's the promise of AI? A fundamental question. We promise with these things, just like every other technology, higher quality outcomes faster than what's currently possible, right? And putting that together for a second with our lived experiences, why is it that AI projects fail fundamentally? There's a bunch of reasons. And if I pick out a few of these, things like lack of trust, inadequate data, inadequate objectives, all of them kind of come together to be a fundamental data problem. So what I would offer to you is that data problems have confined so many AI projects to the realm of science experiments for years. And addressing that will unlock so much value. So in Maximo Application Suite 9.0, we align on that intent of what the user's trying to do. That data that we're building upon, whether it's image data, structured text, time series data, we can now infuse with an AI layer built around IBM's Watson X to drive data flows, to drive insights, to drive messages that then drive value out into the organization. Work order intelligence, which you heard from Kendra earlier, is an example of that. Right? We're articulating at the heart of one of the core parts of the Maximo Application Suite in the core workflow, how we can make this just a little bit better. That looks like this, right? If I take my example, it's structured text, it's an AI inference, it's driving a set of flows or templates that then are driving messages that someone's able to take an action on that I can automate the entire way through if I so choose. A different look at it, conversational AI. You saw from Kendra's keynote a glimpse of this with assistants and agents. If you come by our booth later today at the welcome reception, you'll see a real view of what that looks like, pulling together different kinds of data to address exactly the issues that you might see in real life. And you could touch it and feel it, and you'll see some more of it in Giant's session in a little bit too. I call this out because several of our good colleagues helped to build a reference architecture for how to put conversational AI into Maximo. And that's so important and crucial to us. This is available, you'll get it in the materials, but you can take this and build on top of it if you so choose. Finally, as I wrap stuff up, I want to close on data and just share with you, zooming out from Maximo and Tririga, looking at the kinds of data that come into play for a second. There's different domains that are now coming together across visual data, text, time series, and we're going to leverage those to build agents, to build workflows, or both, frankly. And we expect partners and customers to use these to drive value back into their organizations. So for all of this, please take this as a lens to look at the rest of the conference through. If you can see an example where you have information available that if only you were to combine it with something else, find one of us, find a partner, find someone and ask a question. See if you can figure out how to crack that and leverage it. It's tremendously valuable and it's important for you all. Thank you so much.